everyone, welcome to Kandy's Conversations with me, Kandy Delore. Today I'm joined by an absolutely amazing woman. Honestly, she's so brilliant. She is a British survival specialist. She is an adventurer, a television presenter and an author of Mind of a Survivor. And she's also widely known for her work alongside Grylls on Mission Survive and Breaking Point. And her name is Megan Hine. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Kandy. Thanks so much for having me along. I'm so excited to come and chat to you.
Oh, no, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited to speak with you and find out all about everything that you do and the journeys you've been on. But first of all, I'd like to ask you, how has the quarantine experience been for you?
It's such a good question because I think it's affected us all in a multitude of different ways. But for me, I usually spend like 10, 11 months of every year out on the field in quite extreme environments, so extreme wilderness environments, which have an inherent stress and inherent risk in them as well, from the wildlife, from the environment, from the terrain, and I'm usually looking after the lives of other people in these environments. So that kind of, I guess a lot of the time, like my fight flight response, my kind of internal, like the stress response is triggered a lot of the time, and I think because it's on all the time, I don't really notice it. So I think my body and my mind had really become like a little bit unbalanced from that. So for me, like, lockdown has just been an incredible opportunity to take some time to myself, to stop, to reconnect with friends and family that I hadn't spoken to in a long time, and to really kind of rebalance my mind. I've been doing like a lot of yoga, a lot of running, and kind of working on muscles, because my job's very physical, but I tend to use the same muscles over and over, and it's been really good kind of working on opposing muscles and kind of ironing out the aches and pains that unfortunately seem to come with getting older. So for me, it's been a really positive experience. It's been tough, obviously, losing work overnight, and I know that it's been really tough for a lot of people as well. But I was in Iceland last week, so the world is starting to turn again. So hopefully it's not much longer.
Yes, I hope so. You know, during lockdown is when I actually discovered you. Well, I've heard of you before, but during lockdown is when I actually read your book. I got the audio version, and I've got to admit, it was gripping from the start. I didn't even realize that I hadn't got to chapter 1 yet, and I was actually just in the intro of things. And on the first page, I was like, oh my goodness, I have to get myself some munchies. I got myself some crisps, some chocolate, and I got cozy. And I was just so drawn in by everything you were saying from the minute I opened the front cover. And I feel the same way about your Instagram posts too, and the interviews that you do with other adventurers and explorers, and the stories you tell. They're just so informative and interesting. And I'll be honest, I've never read a book like yours, you know, and it's been a long time since I actually felt excited about hearing about someone's travels, and especially coming from a woman, you know, a female role model. And I have to say that, you know, you're absolutely brilliant. Could you tell us a bit about, you know, who you are and what it is you do, please?
So I kind of do quite a range of things, but so I have a small expedition company that I run, that I take clients on bespoke expeditions. So I have to pinch myself for this, because it's like, basically my clients will call me up and be like, we want to go on an adventure, where do you recommend? And it's like, well, where would I like to go? So that's amazing. And then the sort of work that I'm predominantly doing at the moment is behind the scenes on TV shows. So some of the biggest adventure shows in the world, and my job kind of starts with the concept of a show. So I will have a chat with the presenter, I'll have a chat with the channel, with the production company that are making the show about their ideas, and we'll talk about what their needs are and what they hope to achieve. And I'll put forward some environments. So maybe they want to go to the jungle, maybe they want to go to the desert, and we'll have a discussion. We'll have a discussion about, you know, where they want to go, and I'll put forward these ideas. And once they've kind of agreed it amongst themselves, I'll then get sent out into the terrain, sometimes by myself, sometimes with a partner, and we go out and we look for the journey within the terrain. So we look for stunts, we look for the survival challenges, we talk to locals, we look at the permitting processes, because actually setting up a TV show isn't a case of just rocking up in country and, and starting to film. There's a lot of legislation, there's a lot of permitting stuff around all of that. And then once we start filming, I then step into a safety role. So I then look after the safety of the crew and the contributors, so the cast as well, and make sure that everybody is as safe as they can possibly be, which is sometimes incredibly difficult because of the nature of the environments that we're working in. So, you know, jungles with deadly snakes, and, you know, over the years I have had a few incidences just from the very nature of the environments that we work in. So it's constantly always being switched on and everything. But do you know what? I feel so incredibly lucky and fortunate to have been able to make this lifestyle work.
Wow. And, you know, I actually recall reading in your book that you were bitten by a scorpion twice. I just thought, oh my goodness. I mean, what did that feel like?
Well, it really, really hurt. I'd have been quite young at the time. I think that was the first commercial expedition I did. I was working for a bushcraft company, a British bushcraft company, and we just set up a first kind of anthropological expedition where we went out into Namibia, and I was out there with my boss beforehand, and we were kind of setting things up, and then the clients came in for 2 weeks, and we spent some time with the Sound Bushmen, who are incredible people, and then we went off with a couple of their families, a couple of the Bushman families, out into the wilds to go and kind of put all their skills into practice to go and survive out there with kind of nothing. And it was towards the end of the trip, and we'd kind of come back to a tented camp, and I just finished packing up the tents, and I picked up this tent to go and put it in the back of the Land Rover, and a scorpion fell off the bottom of it, landed on my ankle, and like stung me twice. And it's like a bee sting, like if you've ever been stung by a bee, but like 100 times worse. Wow. It was incredibly painful. I was just like, right, in this situation, I can't panic. I have to stay calm, because I don't know how deadly this is. I don't know a huge amount about scorpions, so I didn't at the time. And it's like, if I panic, it's going to push it through my blood system quicker. So I was like, right, I need to stay calm. And go and tell my boss what's happened. And he didn't believe me because I was so calm. And then they put me on intravenous antihistamine, which completely kind of knocked me out. And actually, the next day, it's kind of funny. Like the next day, I was out to shoot a warthog. To get for dinner, because we were living off the bush, and I was sat at the top of this tree with this rifle in my hands, with another instructor on the branch below me, and I was like, the histamine was still in my system, and I was just sitting there kind of like nodding off, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna fall out of the tree and shoot this guy on my way down. But yes, anyway, that was my first kill as well. I'm not proud. I don't like killing stuff, but you know, sometimes in these situations, you know, it's part of life and part of the lifestyle. So that was actually my first kill. Actually, it was a warthog.
Wow. And hunting is definitely part of, you know, living and surviving out in the wilderness. I think you're brave to do that. How did you first get into all of this, like going out into the wilderness, and where did you learn your skills from and how to survive and thrive out there?
So both my parents are really into the outdoors. They were both geography teachers originally. My dad was actually a geologist. So when I was a child, like all our family holidays were to go off in a caravan, like six people in a caravan, and go into the mountains in the UK. So like up into Scotland in the Lake District, North Wales, which is actually where I'm based now, where my mum's from. And we were just kind of let to run free and a bit of feral, which I really, really appreciate that. I always wanted to travel, but we didn't have the money. There wasn't the opportunity to travel abroad. So that was kind of why I made it into my career, because it's something I'd always wanted to do. When I was in my teens, I joined the military cadets, and through them, I had access to all this adventurous training, so ice climbing in Scotland and whitewater kayaking and like all this incredible like sort of adventurous activities, and I loved it. I think when I was at school, I found it really, really hard to be kind of trapped within four walls. I had like this real like anxiety that kind of get me in my chest, and I'd often play up, like I couldn't really myself within those walls. I'd often be like sent out of the classroom. But for me, like discovering like mountain biking, I in fact discovered mountain biking quite early on, and kind of running in the mountains and in the hills behind where I grew up. Within that, I just found this like arena where I could express myself. It was all about like overcoming kind of my own limitations. And although I kind of played team sports, I never really enjoyed it because I just couldn't really figure out, I couldn't understand why we had like these imaginary boundaries, you know, that somebody had made up and we couldn't. Whereas beyond that, I could see like the hills, like beyond the kind of like the, you know, the rounders pitch or the, you know, the sports field, like the football field. I could see the hills. And I'm just like, there's this whole like world out there that I just want to explore. I don't want to be trapped.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
Wow. So you spoke about hunting, and the first thing that you killed and ate was a water hog. I mean, how does somebody actually find their own food in the wild?
So it's really it's quite difficult to do. So, you know, for anybody listening and who's interested in like doing any foraging and stuff, because there's some amazing like wild edibles like here in the UK. Make sure that you positively ID those things before you start munching away. Like ask somebody for help, whatever. Don't just randomly go eating berries. It won't end well. But I think like there's something very primal about it. So I've been in situations where I've really been dropped out into the wilds with nothing but a machete and usually like a medical pack to survive. And within a few days, there's something incredibly feral within us, like very primal, that comes out, and it's like this, it's very animalistic side, which is what we are, you know. We've created this incredible world around us, which is amazing, but inside us we're animals really, and we still have those same responses to environments and things as, you know, as any animal does. So you put yourself in that environment, and it's really fascinating to see, you know, that kind of animalistic side come out, and kind of the survival thing. I'm not a big fan of killing things. For me, it's about food, and I'm mostly vegetarian. I live on the coast in North Wales, and I do a lot of spearfishing here. So I'll go out with my spear gun and I'll go and shoot fish, but it's always for food. And there's just something absolutely amazing in the hunt. Like, it's the most incredible thing when it's like it's just you and that animal, particularly when there's like the skill of when you're spearfishing, because you have to be quite close to a fish. There's just something amazing in that interaction. But as soon as I pull the trigger, I just feel like this real kind of like wave of sadness come over me. And then it's respect. But I think with that, like, I really then respect what I'm eating. I then, you know, I'll bring my fish back and I'll cook it well and I'll eat it all, and nothing goes to waste. And I think we've become so disconnected from the food that we eat. Like, if you go to the supermarket and, you know, that vacuum packed chicken, it's not an animal. You don't see it as an animal anymore. And we've become so disconnected from that I think all kids should go out and, you know, learn how to gut rabbits and, you know, catch fish. And
it's true.
Respect.
That's how all our ancestors did it back then, isn't it? They used to go and capture their food and roast it and stuff, skin it and stuff like that. So, as gruesome as it sounds, and I know some people who don't eat meat might be really offended by what we're saying and stuff, but you know, that is how it was done back then. I'm sure they didn't really even know what a vegetarian was.
Well, they wouldn't have been able to survive on just purely some vegetables. I mean, it's really because in the UK we're still not sure what our ancestors would have lived on, like what plants and things. Because if you look at any like foraging books and things, a lot of it is kind of more kind of salady stuff. So, you know, like kind of plants and things that you could kind of supplement like lettuce or something with, but there's very few like tubers and things like kind of root vegetables and stuff. So we still don't really know like what our ancestors would have eaten. A lot of nutrients and things you can find along the coast, so a lot of seaweeds and things have got like quite high content, but our ancestors would still have needed the protein that the hunting animals would have given them. But when because I've hunted with native peoples, and everything gets used. So with the Sound Bushmen, I joined them on a persistence hunt, which is, this sounds horrible, but this is a very traditional method of hunting that they've been doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years, is because it's so hot in the desert there, and we're one of the only animals that is able to run over long distances. We're slower than a lot of animals, but we can run. We've got the endurance, whereas most animals, it's very short bursts. So if you're hunting down a kudu, which is like a big, kind of like a deer, then they will run it across the desert in the heat of the day when that animal wants to be like hiding in the shade. And they'll chase it across the desert, and so it'll go from shade to shade, and then they won't let it rest, and its body can't cope with that, so eventually it collapses, and then they can go in and thing. But there's so much skill involved in that. It's absolutely incredible watching them do that, because it's all in the tracking and reading the signs on the ground and finding the right animal. It's amazing to see that.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. What is the most amazing thing that you've seen on your journeys and your travels? I know you've probably seen loads, but if there's one that you could pinpoint, or even two, what would that be?
I think for me, it's the human interaction. I'm so fortunate that I get to see some of the most wild places, and places that people never really or usually get to see, and to have access to those places is just incredible. But it's always like that human interaction is so beautiful. Seeing people achieve the goals that they didn't know that they could, seeing teams come together, that interaction with local peoples or native peoples. For me, that's beautiful. And as a guide, being able to accompany somebody on their kind of goal of a lifetime and go with them, and it's like, for every expedition that I go on, you kind of go on this roller coaster of emotion of work, going with that person and sharing that experience with somebody is just it's amazing.
It sounds amazing. It honestly does. And even when you spoke about going ahead of the groups that you take out, going by yourself or with a partner and checking out the area, doing research and doing stuff like that, it just sounds really amazing and interesting. And you must have so many different experiences each time you go to a new place. And you also probably learn a lot from other people too, like the guides, the people that you take with you as a guide. You probably see changes in people, when they get out there. So how do you feel like the wilderness changes people, whether they're in the mountains or the jungle? What's the most major changes that you see in people once they get out there?
I think that's such a brilliant question, and I think it's amazing now that the NHS in Scotland is now starting to prescribe getting outside for a walk and just spending time out in nature. But I think it isn't really kind of explained why that is. So I think just the simple process of just going and spending time out in nature is kind of just opens up your mind and kind of provides that calm. But on these expeditions, like particularly when we're going into quite extreme environments and people having to push themselves, there's a lot of discomfort as well that they have to work through. Maybe if it's in the jungle, maybe they're going to be wet all the time. They're carrying heavy bags. There's the pain and discomfort of all of that, and kind of working through, kind of overcoming all of those things and your own kind of limitations and things, and kind of it's almost like it holds a mirror up to you and you see your vulnerabilities. It opens you up because in these environments you can't blame somebody else for your mistakes. You have to take ownership, otherwise it's your life on the line potentially. So you have to look after yourself. You have to the personal admin. So if in the jungle, making sure that your feet are well looked after, because within a few days it's like they will start rotting. So it's like the personal admin on top of that. So it gives you like a huge amount of confidence, like going off into these environments and doing these things. It gives you confidence in yourself. It's like, hell yeah, like I just survived that. Nothing life can throw me. It kind of puts some things into perspective. It makes you realize that. And I think Corona has probably done that for a lot of people as well.
Yes.
It puts a lot of things into perspective, doesn't it? That what is important. It's like we put so much emphasis on material possessions, on our jobs, on our cars, on all of these things. But actually during lockdown, so many of us have reconnected with friends and family and realized that actually that's far more important than a lot of the stuff in our modern world.
It's so true. That is so true. Another thing that I wanted to ask you is, so obviously, people can have accidents while they're out on excursions and stuff, and there are no emergency services where you are, like in the mountains and the jungles and stuff. And if you do need rescuing, it might take a little while for them to get to you. Don't you find that terrifying?
Yes, sometimes. Like, so yeah, particularly when you know, I get to work with, you know, some of the biggest names in Hollywood and in the sports world, and yeah, obviously having the response, not that their lives are any more valuable than anybody else's, but you know that they've got a bigger legal team behind them should they like twist an ankle or cut themselves. So um, so, you know, I think this is something that I know that there's like a big push on social media now with kind of like the adventurer and going on adventures, and people going off and doing these amazing things. But I think what is lacking is kind of like what goes on behind the scenes on those things. So a huge part of my job is mitigating risk, so minimizing the risk. So going out and identifying things within the environment that could potentially put people's lives at risk or their welfare at risk. And so it's like lots of like, so I write risk assessments around this that we kind of have to adhere to. It's all the boring stuff. There's, you know, like while we're going through the terrain, I'm constantly running a dynamic risk assessment. It's in the qualifications that I have, and I have to keep current. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So basically behind any expedition that I take my clients on or any film shoot, I've built a safety net. So if something happens, we fall into that, because nothing ever goes as planned on, like life, nothing ever goes to plan on expedition. Yeah. So knowing that you've got that fallback should something seriously go wrong, and you've kind of thought through all the bits and pieces as well, goes a long way to minimizing that. Yes, by the very nature of the environments that we work in, like stuff does happen, but because I've got that plan in place, it gives me the freedom then to kind of be able to deal with that when that happens. You know, if we've got a road traffic accident, or you know, I've stumbled across drug cartels on journeys and things, and yeah, so you know, there are things that are, you just can't predict for everything, and then you know, you have to kind of work with that in the environment. But yeah, accidents do happen, and sometimes we are more than 24 hours from help. And within the filming stuff now, I push to take a medic, so that they've got the right kit to be able to deal with that. But sometimes, you know, it's something that you have to deal with. Like, you know, I have to keep my own medical qualifications and things up, so that, you know, if the shit hits the fan, yeah, we really can manage it as best as possible. But obviously, it's a constant worry in my mind.
Sounds like you make a lot of preparation, and even the fact that you keep your medical skills up to date and stuff, that you're always constantly learning too and doing the risk assessments and stuff. So it's more than you just packing your stuff and venturing out, you know. Yes. It sounds so easy, when, especially if you're watching it on TV, but the work that goes on behind, the things that you're doing, and going out to the places ahead of the people that you take to tour with you and stuff, you are definitely very busy, and you've got a lot that you need to sort out before you do head off and things like that. But it must be really exciting when you know you're going to a totally new place, and you know, especially when you might see things like, I know in your book you mentioned that you were staying somewhere where there were leopard-like cats. I mean, that would absolutely terrify me, to be honest. I would be so scared. Where do you get all this bravery from? Like, where does it come from?
I feel fear, and I feel like I have a healthy respect for these environments to go into, for sure. And I think it's more that I have like a curiosity. Like, I've always been so fascinated with people, with the world, and like I like to poke things to see what happens. This is why I was in so much trouble when I was a child. Because leave stuff alone. It's like, if there's a big red button, I want to press it. I want to know what happens. So it's like, I think for me, like, the wilderness is like, gives me that you know, kind of place to explore. It's like, but it's more about kind of pushing my own buttons. It's like, how far can I push myself? What can I do? So I have kind of two personas when it comes to like the wilderness and spending time outside. I have my guiding persona, where, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to push myself out of my limits, out of my comfort zone, because I'm providing like I should be providing a comfort zone and boundaries for my clients so that they can operate within my safety. So if I'm stepping out of my comfort zone with my clients, I have to really question like what I'm doing there, because I can't keep them safe any longer. And then I have like my own personal kind of relationship with the outdoors, which is all about pushing myself to see where my breaking point is. And that's always fascinating when when you come face to face with yourself and you think that that's it, and then you find you can push further and it's just amazing. And I see this like because that was kind of one of the motivations behind writing Mind of a Survivor, was I was so fascinated with what makes a survivor. And for me, when I drop people out into these survival scenarios, it's often the people that society wouldn't expect to survive that do. And and it's often like women often do much better than men, and it's because we question, we're able to see the world on a multitude of levels, and we don't have the same kind of like almost arrogance and testosterone and stuff kind of. We go in and we tend to observe and we question and we look around us and we question our own place within that environment, and we build our confidence from then. So I always think if I see a woman at the top of her game, top of her field, CEO, I know that she is one seriously badass woman, because she has built this incredible foundation. Because I think for us women, we need to have the confidence that we have all the skills we need before we push ourselves to the next level. And I think that's I see the same way within the outdoors as well. Like, and women often do better in these challenges than men.
Well, speaking of badass women, Bear Grylls said that you are stronger than 99% of the men that he knows, and that you're incredible. So how do you feel hearing that about yourself?
Well, it's always really nice. Yeah, I remember I was there when he said it. It was like at a press conference, and it was really nice. It was really nice to hear that. I've known Bear for about 12, 13 years now. I've been working with him. So I've been working with him since the original Man vs. Wild days, which is the show that really kind of took his career out there and off. So it's been amazing to be part of that journey and see like where we've come to now. And for the past 10 years, we've been at the cutting edge of making these adventure shows, which has just been amazing. It's been an incredible journey.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. What is the most fun and fascinating part about your work?
Oh, there's so many bits. I mean, for me, it's the travel. It's getting to go to these new places, and again, kind of like seeing how I respond in these environments. And yeah, I mean, getting to go to these places where so few people ever get to go, and spending time with them and interacting with like local people, is just incredible. I mean, because I get to go to these extreme environments, I see the effects of climate change. It is happening, and you really see it. You see it in like the polar regions, I see it in the deserts, and it's quite terrifying, really. But it's also like I feel so honoured to be able to go and see those things firsthand, as well, and and to be able to be part of kind of showcasing the natural world to people. It's amazing. Oh,
that is brilliant. And lastly, what advice do you have for anyone who is a nature lover and they'd love to venture out into the wild, but they feel a bit scared and a bit afraid?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. A lot of what we've been talking on here is like extreme expeditioning and extreme environments, and I appreciate that's not accessible to everybody, but the same preparation that I put into going off to the Amazon rainforest, kind of those same sort of processes should be thought through if you want to get out into the outdoors and start pushing yourself within the UK as well. And we have so many amazing nature places here. I mean, if you want to spend more time outside, just go outside. Like if you're based in London, there's some amazing green areas. You've got Wimbledon Common, you've got the hills like Surrey Hills and things close by as well. Just get out there, maybe find friends that have got a bit more experience and go out with them. There's some really good, as long as you've got signal, there's some really good apps that you can actually use for navigation. If you want to push it a little bit more and maybe get into wild camping, or get out into the mountains like in Snowdonia where I live, then I cannot recommend hiring like an outdoor professional who can teach you the basic skills. There's a whole sort of, there's a whole load of us here that are guides, instructors, leaders, who've dedicated our lives to taking people out into the outdoors. And it won't break the bank to just hire somebody for a weekend, for a couple of days, or for a week. Yeah, and learn some basic skills. So things like navigation, because it's great when the weather's good, but I mean, I'm looking out my window now and I can't see anything. It's grim. And even things like what clothing to wear as well. You know, things like, we have a saying called, like, that we say, in the hills cotton kills, and it's like, people don't know that, you know, that cotton just absorbs moisture, and when you're operating in areas like the UK where we have cold wind and wet, you're opening yourself up to hypothermia. So like, no cotton in the mountains, like simple things like that an instructor or somebody who's much more experienced will be able to teach you. It shouldn't be scary, but if you've got those basic skills, they'll set you up for your life of adventure.
Yes. Oh, that's absolutely amazing advice. Thank you. Everybody that's watching and listening, I highly recommend you go out and get a copy of Megan Hine's book, Mind of a Survivor. The audio version is even better because you can hear her voice reading it, and she just sounds so into it, and it's absolutely brilliant. Where can everyone follow you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram at Megan_Hine, and Facebook is Megan Hine as well. And it's like, I love hearing from you guys too. I love seeing your adventures, and myself or one of my office team will get back to your messages if you've got any questions about, you know, how to take those first steps into getting outside. It's accessible to us all. It doesn't discriminate. It's amazing. Get outside, but make sure you equip yourself with the skills.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me today, Megan. I just appreciate it so much. I think you're a wonderful, strong, amazing woman. You are such a positive role model, and just super thank you for joining me today. Right back at you.
Thanks.